Chapter 7, which is activity-based costing. Early on, we looked at allocating manufacturing costs based on a couple ways. One was just by a whole company-wide rate, and we would take the estimated manufacturing cost, divide by the estimated labor hours, and then we would apply the overhead based on that. And then we went to a department and said, okay, now we're going to separate this into the department. And so the more that we specialize and get down to more detail, the better the accuracy and the better idea we have on what actually our costs are. In this chapter, we're going to be talking about activity-based costing. And so we're going to be looking at different rates. So there could be a rate for, in this department, there's a rate for overhead, and then we could look at activities, for instance, tool setup. And so we know that it takes X amount of time and X amount of labor to change the factory settings. So we're going to be looking at the different types of activities. Okay. So it's a costing method designed to provide managers with cost information for strategic and other decisions that potentially affect capacity. Okay. And therefore fixed as well as variable cost. It's ordinarily used as a supplement to rather than as a replacement for the company's usual costing system. So it just kind of gives you a different idea. So how are costs treated under activity-based costing? In ABC, non-manufacturing as well as manufacturing costs may be assigned to products, but only on a cause and effect basis. So we have traditional product costing, and we have ABC product costing, which is going to combine manufacturing and non-manufacturing costs to get a true picture of what that product cost us to make and to sell. Some manufacturing costs may be excluded from product costs. Most, but not all, are going to be transferred over, and some of the non-manufacturing cost will be. It excludes organization sustaining costs and idle capacity costs from product costs. So when we're not using the equipment, we're not going to allocate those costs. In regular manufacturing, we are going to allocate all of those costs. Again, this is a supplement, and this is to provide more detailed information to the managers. We have numerous overhead pools. So we're really trying to separate and go, okay, what does it cost to make an equipment change? And we want to make sure we assign equipment changes to products that require equipment changes. Each ABC pool has its own unique measure of activity. While tradition relies on direct labor hours and or machine hours to allocate this. Direct labor and machine hours work correctly when changes in the quantity of the base are correlated with changes in the overhead cost being assigned using the base. Relying exclusively on direct labor hours has come under increased scrutiny since, on an economy-wide basis, direct labor and overhead costs have been moving in opposite directions, and the variety of products produced by companies has increased. So we're making a lot more different products. So, key definition: activity, an event that causes the consumption of overhead resources. Activity cost pool is a cost bucket in which costs related to a single activity measure are accumulated. I mean, in one case, we had different departments, so that would really be an activity cost pool, because if you have the assembly department and you have the um, another department, maybe testing, then those have a cost bucket. The measure is an allocation based on an activity-based costing system. So we have two types. We have transaction drivers, simple count of the number of times an activity occurs, all right? And then duration driver, a measure of the amount of time needed for an activity. Traditional systems rely exclusively on allocations that are driven by volume of production. Okay, so the more we put in there, we'll just divide that by that number. ABC defines 5 levels of activity that largely do not relate to the volume of units produced. So we have batch level activity, we have unit level activity, we have product level activity, we have organization sustaining activity, and we have customer level activity. Characteristics, well, strong top management support. So, in other words, this isn't something that is just easy to accomplish. It is going to take people. It's going to be you're going to consume cost, but hopefully this will give you better information. And again, in accounting, our product is information. It's linked to how people are evaluated or rewarded. So if you are lowering your costs, you're being more efficient, you're going to be rewarded. And then cross-functional teams should be created so that you can work together to, instead of working in isolation where, hey, I'm only concerned with my part of the manufacturing process, I'm not concerned with the other part. And that creates inefficiency. So the 5 steps for implementing ABC. The company makes 2 types of automobile batteries, sure start and long life. Baxter reported its first loss ever. All right, so you've got sales, cost of goods sold, gross margin, shipping expense, marketing expenses, general expenses. So we lost $2 million. So that obviously is going to be concern. So they selected the following activity call cost pools and activity measurements. So customer orders, number of customer orders, design changes, number of design changes, order size, machine hours, customer relations, number of active customers, other not applicable. Customer orders assigned all costs of resources that are consumed by taking and processing customer orders. So you have an order entry department, and that's all the costs associated with that. And then you have a design change department. So these people, their function is to create a new design. And so you can isolate their cost. Order size assigned all costs of resources consumed as a consequence of the number of units produced. Customer relations assigned all costs associated with maintaining relations with others, and then other is assigned all organization sustaining costs and unused capacity costs. In other words, if we're not using the factory in under the regular way, we would still allocate those. So what we're doing is we're allocating inefficiency to these products. All right, assign cost to cost pools using a first stage allocation. So here we have production department, wages, etc. And so for the production department, the total cost of 14 million, general administrative department 6 million, and in the marketing department 2 million. So our overhead costs are $22 million. Direct materials, direct labor, and shipping are excluded because their existing cost system can directly trace these costs to products or customers' orders. And so the following distribution of resource consumption across activity pools is determined. So 30% of the customer orders, 30% for design. Okay, so 30% of the indirect factory wages go for customer orders, 30% for design changes, 20% is related to the order size, and 10% is for customer relations. All right, so you break all of these costs down, and then you notice that it's 100%. So really, we're going to allocate based on these percentages. Assign overhead cost to activity pools. So here's the production department. All right, here's the G&A department. Here's the marketing department. Okay, and so for production department, customer orders are 30% of the total for these wages. Okay, so 30% of 6 million is going to be allocated to customer orders. And then factory, again, 20% of the factory equipment depreciation is related to customer orders. All right, so we come up with the dollar amounts for the different order size, customer relations, other. And so we have allocated all of these costs, but in a different way, a more precise way. So really, it's the total of the indirect factory wages times the percentage for this category, and that's true for each one of these categories. So we determined that Baxter Battery will have these total activities for each activity cost pool. So we'll have 10,000 customer orders. So we're going to find that whatever the customer orders cost us, divide by 10,000 and assign those. Same thing. Design changes, there's 4,000. So we know the total overhead for that, machine hours, etc. So now we're going to start breaking it up and being a little more precise, but it's still similar. Before we just looked at total factory overhead divided by machine hours. And now we're separating that overhead into different activities. And then this is the driver. And so we're now going to assign it based on these numbers. So computation of activity rates. So for every customer order, we're going to assign $452 to that product. For design changes, 760. For order size, we'll have 650 per man hour. Customer relations, we have 2,000 customers, so it's 1,540 per customer. And then other is just really not part of that manufacturing process that we can trace. So we know what the direct materials were, we know what the direct labor were, we know what the shipping costs were. And so now we're just going to add in our first stage allocation of these other costs to those products. And then second stage is the dollar per order, the dollar per change, the dollar per machine hour, dollar per customer. So Sure Start requires no design resources, 800,000 batteries ordered with 4,000 separate orders. Each Sure Start requires 36 minutes of machine time for a total of 480,000 machine hours. Long Life requires new design resources, 400,000 battery ordered with 6,000 separate orders. So you can see that this one is going to cost more because here we've got what 20 or 200 batteries per order. Here we've got half, less than that. We've got half of the orders, but 2,000 more actual orders, or 2,000, 400,000 less quantity. Okay, we need custom designed, and it requires 48 minutes. So you can see that these probably are going to cost more, just looking at it. And so for Sure Start, again, 4,000 activity times that rate for each order is 1808. No design changes. Order size. Okay, so we come up with the overhead for 4,928, and we can divide 800,000 into that, and that will give us our cost, our overhead cost per battery. And then for Long Life, same thing. So you see that Long Life, really, we have 400,000 batteries that cost us 7.8 million. Here we've got 800,000 batteries that cost us 4.9 million. So we have absorbed all of the overhead. So let's take a look at how Baxter's battery system works for just one of the 2,000 customers, Acme Auto Parts, who placed a total of 12 orders. Note that the 4 orders for Long Life requires a design change. All right. So what are we taking into account? Well, 8 orders, all right, and then of 60, 4 orders of 50. We've got 288 machine hours and 160 machine hours. So overhead costs for Acme Auto Parts is, again, number of orders times the order rate, number of designs times the design cost per design, um, machine hours here, and then customer relations. So we get that for Acme, based on their specific activities, that our overhead is 12,916. And then from that, we can add the direct material, direct labor, the shipping. And so that will give us the actual cost, and we can use that to determine what we should charge these customers. So we have sales of 31 million for Sure Start and sales of 18 million for Long Lives. And then we have direct materials, direct labor, shipping, and then we have assigned these costs and allocated them not based on just machine hours and not just on direct labor, but based on the activities required to manufacture these parts. And so Sure Starts, what we find is that we make a pretty good margin. And really, because you look at the order size and the design changes and the number of orders, it takes us a lot more effort to produce the batteries for Long Lives. And so, in actuality, we're losing money for the Long Lives. Whereas Sure Starts is probably the most profitable company or most profitable customer. So you can see what the profit is, and then we order. We have these that aren't assigned. These are just general overhead costs, and so basically, we. This is why we're losing $2 million. You wipe out this, you probably could wipe out some of these, but you now can say, wait a minute, it's taken us a lot more effort to do this. And so we really need to raise our price to Long Lives. Now, can you? That's a good question. So here's the sales for Acme Auto Parts, 29,200. Here are direct material, direct labor, shipping. Okay, and then we assign the manufacturing cost based on the activities. All right, and then our margin is $384. Yeah, so for revenue of 29,200, you're making $384. Doesn't seem worth the effort. Okay, and so that 384 has to be used to pay for these other costs that aren't assigned. So again, we look at this and we look at our direct material, and we come up and see that the second step is to compute the plant-wide overhead rate. All right. The plant-wide manufacturing overhead rate is 14 million divided by 800,000 man-hours. So if we were to assign man-hours, we've got 480,000 for Sure Start and 320,000 for Long Lives. So we've got 1,750 per machine hour. And so we've assigned our overhead cost based on just machine hours. And so we have allocated $8.4 million to Sure Starts and $5.6 million to Long Lives. But in actuality, we've determined that, okay, so the fourth step is actually compute the profit margins. So you've got Sure Start, and we've got what we would have our profit. So here's a profit margin, okay? So in this case, we've assigned it just based on machine hours. And so under machine hours, what we're looking at is that Sure Starts has a profit margin of 6.9. At Long Lives, we've computed a profit margin of 2.1 million. We've excluded the shipping and the marketing expense because those aren't really manufacturing costs. All right. But here is the difference. So Sure Start, under the traditional system, without allocating the shipping costs and allocating the other costs, we think that we're making a margin of 1.4 million, when in actuality we're losing this because we've tracked it down to the actual specific activities that we need to make these products. So why do they different? What are they different? Traditional costing allocates all manufacturing overhead to products. ABC costing only assigns manufacturing overhead costs consumed by products to those products. Traditional costing allocates all manufacturing overhead costs using a volume related allocation base, whereas ABC is more specific. You know, well, this company doesn't use design changes, so none of those design changes really should be allocated to this product. And then traditional costing disregards selling and administrative expenses because they are assumed to be period expenses. But now we're assigning them to specific clients, to specific products. And so we really have our fully loaded cost. Again, these are internal reports. These aren't traditional, here's your product costing. So we use this. As you can see, it's a whole different picture. You realize that one of your customers is costing you a lot of money, and you're actually losing money on that customer. And so activity rates can also provide valuable clues concerning where there is waste and opportunity for improvement. And you get a better picture of really your customers. Now, there are limitations. It does take resources. You've got to have people that are able to determine these costs, assign these costs. Um, Secondly, you want to fully allocate all costs to products, so you're allocating dead time to these products, and you know that to in a sense, those are costs that you have to somehow make up. There's resistance because these reports are different. There's a potential for misinterpretation of unfamiliar numbers. You know, people are going to say, well, how do you know this is correct? And et cetera. It does not replace existing cost system that supports external reporting. Okay. So that's really, they're going to allocate all of the manufacturing costs to the product. So two costing systems may be needed. But I think you can see that there's certainly an advantage of being able to be more specific in tracking your costs. We've seen here that the traditional way, we've really um, distorted which of our customers is more profitable, and that might make you make a decision that really is detrimental to the company when you actually think you're doing the right thing. So, ABC costing is something that a lot of companies do use, and you can see why they would use it.